I'm just going to do a quick video for some homework questions that are coming through. So I'm going to look at 3C, E, and F, and then I'll do question 10. So question 3 says, in each case, sketch the rotation angle and then state the reference angle. So if I was doing C and I was to sketch a rotation angle of 109 degrees, that would be in quadrant 2, right? So this here, and I'll denote that as theta, that theta would be my rotation angle of 190 degrees. What I said in the video is I said, okay, we always draw a point on our terminal arm, and then from that point, we draw a vertical line to the x-axis, right? And you would figure out, well, what is this little red angle inside? So in order to do that, if my terminal arm is at 109 degrees, and this is 180 degrees, it'd be 180 minus 109, and that would give you a reference angle of 71 degrees. Now, E and F are different. E says the angle is going to terminate at 180 degrees. So it starts at 0, and it goes right to 180 degrees, and it terminates there. And it's asking, what is the reference angle? Well, the reference angle for E would be 0, right? Because we always go back to the x-axis. So that hasn't opened up at all. So my reference angle for E, theta R, would be 0 degrees. If I look at F, 270 degrees. So let's draw an angle that terminates at 270 degrees. I'm terminating right here. Now, normally I say you draw a point on your terminal arm and you draw a vertical line up to your x-axis. The one time we can't do this is here at 270 degrees. So if I said, well, what's the reference angle? You'd actually have a triangle in this situation that looks like this. And it's just sort of saying, well, what is this angle here? And that's a 90-degree angle. So for a 270, if the angle in center position is 270 degrees, then the reference angle to go from 270 to 360 would be 90 degrees. So theta R in that situation would be 90 degrees. Okay, and it's the only situation that you would get where you can't draw that vertical line from the terminal arm, the x-axis, is if you're right at 270. So if you're at 270, the reference angle is going to be 90 degrees. Look at question 10, and I'll go through this with you. Okay, consider a reference angle of 50 degrees in quadrant 1. So let's draw that. Reference angle of 50 degrees in quadrant 1. That, remember in quadrant 1, reference angle is equal to the rotational angle. What it says for A, sketch a diagram to show the reference angle reflected in the y-axis. So this is the y-axis here, and it's saying take this 50 degrees and bounce that over, pretend that this is your mirror, that's your line, your mirror line, and bounce that 50 degrees across your y-axis. So if we bounce the reference angle, and it's reflected in the y-axis, that is my new angle, and they want to know, state the measure of the rotation angle formed. So the rotation angle would be, if this is 180 degrees, and this is 50 degrees, 180 degrees minus 50 degrees, the answer for A would be 130 degrees. Okay, so this rotation angle would be 130 degrees. For B, sketch the diagram to show the original reference angle reflected in the x-axis. Okay, so let's draw the original reference angle. So we had a reference angle of 50 degrees, and we're in the, they want it now reflected in the x-axis. So pretend this is your mirror and bounce this line into this quadrant. So now the 50 degrees would go there. And then if I said, okay, well, what's that rotation angle? Remember that the rotation angle, it always starts at 0, and you're rotating it around to the terminal arm. So the terminal arm would be there. One full rotation is 360 degrees. And if you subtract 50 degrees, this terminal arm is going to be at 310 degrees. C, sketch the diagram to show the original reference angle. So here's my original reference angle. They said 50 degrees. Reflected in both the x-axis and the y-axis. So let's reflect in both axes. So there's y, here's x. I'm going to do what it says first, and it says reflected in both the x and the y. So if I reflect it in the x-axis, if I did that one first, it's going to go down here, right? If I use my x-axis as a mirror. Then they want that angle reflected in the y-axis. This is your y-axis, and you need to use that as your mirror. So take this angle and reflect it in your y-axis. If I do that, then I would have 50 degrees here. So this is your original reference angle reflected in the x and the y-axis. And then this is where I'm finishing, right? So this is where my angle finishes. What would that rotation angle be? So from 0, if I opened up and I terminated there, it would be 180 degrees plus 50 degrees. So the answer is 230 degrees. Okay, I just want to show you one quick thing for C. We would get the same answer if it doesn't say do x first and then y. I'll show you how we would get the same answer if I did the opposite. So this is my y-axis, there's my x. Take your 50 degrees. Let's say first I reflected it in the y-axis. I used my y as my mirror. I would go over there. And then if I go from the y-axis and then go to my x, I have to take this angle and reflect it in the x. It would go down here. And I would get the exact same answer, right? My terminal arm would be this guy here. So that would be 180 degrees plus 50 degrees, which would give you an answer of 230 degrees.